Okay, something's showing up. Okay, I guess we're live. Hello, everybody, and welcome. I'm Peter Goldstein, founder of We Did It Health, and our current work is with building a community, the Thrive and Inspire Ambassadors community, which is all about us as ambassadors because we all are passionate about whole food plant-based lifestyle or a vegan lifestyle, and we know how much it benefits the world, how much it benefits health, how much it benefits, of course, animal justice, climate change, as world hunger. So there's four very important reasons to be plant-based and vegan. And that's what we're all about. We're all about supporting the ambassadors, the consumers, the professionals who are whole food plant-based or vegan. And we have all been trying to spread the word and get the world to be vegan and plant-based. Yet after 75 years of this being available, only a couple percent of the world is plant-based and vegan. So it's our passion, our mission, along with you, all of you, to see how we can move the needle and change those statistics. So with that, we're bringing psychology and tools and helping curate content so that we all can find the right seeds to plant with people that we care about, people who we'd like to see their lifestyles change because we know how much they would benefit. And with that in mind, today I have a very special guest returning, and that's Cindy Thompson. She has an amazing story as a firefighter and now as a nutritional coach. And she will talk about getting through the holidays, about inspiring people through the holidays. And one of the things she's going to touch on, which is really a very powerful school of knowledge, I suppose, is emotional intelligence. So with that, I'm going to introduce Cindy and bring her on. And hello, Cindy. And I know you have a presentation, and we'd love for you to tell everybody about yourself and your journey and your goals and your mission and your passion. So with that, please go ahead, Cindy.
Absolutely. Thank you, Peter. It's so good to see you today. It's great to be back here on the show with We Did It Health. If you wouldn't mind bringing up my slides, and I'll get into talking about what I do. Thank you so very much.
Pleasure.
My name is Cindy Thompson. I am a health and lifestyle coach. I work out of the Seattle, Washington area, but I work with people all over the world. Today, we're going to talk about thriving at holiday functions. And this is something that comes up a lot with clients that I'm working with that are plant-based or new plant-based and are really concerned, how do I do the holidays with this new lifestyle or this new eating pattern? And so I'm really excited to talk about this with you. It is something that comes up. It is a real fear that people have, and it's something that is not insurmountable. And there's some things that we can do to really bolster ourselves and have a really fantastic holiday event, whether we're hosting or we're attending at somebody else's home or even at a large event or party. So as Peter had mentioned, I am a retired fire captain paramedic turned health coach. I worked 25 years in emergency services. I retired as a fire captain paramedic out of Gresham, Oregon, next to Portland. It was a very busy urban department. And while I was a firefighter, fire captain, I changed the way I was eating to prevent cancer. My dad had died from non-Hodgkin's lymphoma, and cancer was declared a presumptive illness for firefighters in Oregon, and in most states across the country have presumptive cancer laws for firefighters, which means that the evidence is so overwhelming that being a firefighter exposes you to higher levels of cancer or carcinogens, and firefighters have higher rates of cancer than the general public. So that being said, with my family history and now my work history, I decided to figure out what I needed to do to prevent my risk of cancer. I dove into the research at the local medical school at Oregon Health Sciences University and discovered, to my absolute shock, that really I had a lot of control with the kind of fuel I put in my body, and learned that if I ate a whole food plant-based diet, eliminated animal foods and animal proteins, was the best thing I could do to reduce my risk. So I thought, what have I got to lose? If all I have to do is change my food, I'm going to do that. And it dramatically changed my life. While in this picture that you see here, this is my after picture. Prior to that, I weighed 60 pounds more. And just by changing the fuel I put in my body, the correct foods, all this weight that I had carried as an adult and had trouble taking off with every diet under the sun just started to fall off. And I had all this energy. I became an adult onset athlete, is what I like to call that. Began running and doing marathons and triathlon and swimming. And through the process, was asked to run our firefighter wellness and fitness program. And I did that as additional duties in my department until I retired. So then when I retired and I didn't know what I wanted to be when I grew up anymore, I became a health coach for civilians. So I started my own business, which is Trimazing Health and Lifestyle Coaching. I specialize in helping people transition to whole food, plant-based, vegan, also with sustainability, with zero waste. I'm really excited to be involved with this We Did It Health project. I'm a founding ambassador. I'm also a Food for Life instructor with the Physicians Committee for Responsible Medicine. And I teach lots of classes, both in person and online. If you're interested in some cooking classes that are all whole food, plant-based, and vegan, you can go to my website at trimazing.com and see that there. See my list under events and classes. I do coaching both in person and online. So if you're in the Seattle area, there's opportunity for in-person coaching and classes. Otherwise, I work with lots and lots of people online. It works really great. So again, you can find me at trimazing.com. So today's presentation, we're going to look at emotional intelligence for successfully planning and going through holiday functions, whether they're with family or with friends or with coworkers. It all works really well. And if you don't know what emotional intelligence is right now, we'll go into that so that you understand what it is. Sometimes it's called EQ or emotional quotient, like IQ and EQ, but it's really a great way of learning how to handle our emotions and work with them intelligently to really have a successful interaction with other people. We're going to look at how to prepare and plan prior to the event, what to do during events, and then also look at strategies and tactics for thriving at those functions, whether you are a new vegan or you're established in the plant-based vegan lifestyle. All right, so the most thing, what is our goal when we go to our holiday events? And sometimes we forget, what is the goal of it? And the goal is, it's a party. It's you have fun. And we really want to spend time with other people, find new people. I love going to parties and learning about people I haven't met before, get new friends and new contacts. It's great to have conversation and visit and learn new things. But we also want to make sure that we are true to ourselves and our morals. We don't necessarily want to have to change who we are to go to a party or an event. We still want to stand in our space and keep with our ethics. We will always want to be a positive role model, no matter where we go. And this is a great way to share our gifts, whether it's our gift of conversation, our knowledge, our gift of food. This is a really great way for us to share how great vegan plant-based food is, whether we're hosting or we're going to an event. So that's really what it is. Our goal there is to really have a great time. And we want to stay clear of drama, arguments, and personal attacks. That's not fun for a party. So that's really our goal. Have a good time, stay clear of all of those dramas and arguments. So that's where we're going to head. So part of this presentation, originally when I was coming up with a title for this, my first inkling for a title was, gosh, I wish I had said. And sometimes that happens to us where we go to a party, something happens, it's stressful, our anxiety goes up, we don't know how to respond to something, and we get home and like, man, this is what I should have said. So we are going to start with looking at preparation on, so what will you say if something comes up, so that you're armed with that. You have some tools in your toolbox for when, if that happens, not when, we're not going to plan for bad things to happen at the party, but we're going to have some contingency plans going ahead. And it's really important to be prepared because it can be a minefield if we're not. And so we're just going to take a little bit of time, figure out what to do, what we're going to say, do a little bit of pre-planning scenarios. Then we're ready to go. We can have a good time, and we don't have to do that at the party. All right, so let's start with partying with emotional intelligence. So this has to do with our brain and our responses and our emotions, our heart. All right, so emotional intelligence. So emotional intelligence was a term that was really embraced in the 90s. Daniel Goleman really popularized this. He was a psychologist and presented this as a really great tool for leadership, for just general life and interacting with other people. And this is all about understanding and managing your emotions and those around you. So there's 4 domains when we talk about emotional intelligence. And it has to do with the emotions of yourself and others, and also not only recognizing them, but regulating them. So as you can see here, there's a grid of 4 different areas. When we look at ourself, there's self-awareness and self-management. And then when we look at our interactions with others, it's looking at social awareness and relational management. So we're going to break this down and look at these 2 sections. We're going to start with looking at the self and how that plays out. So for self-awareness is really looking at understanding your own emotions, how we feel and why, and being aware of your triggers. These are things like past experiences, your physical condition, maybe the drive over to your party. I've got a little bit of sunshine that's coming through here. Maybe you had conversations on the way to the party, in the car ride over. Maybe there was traffic issues and you're stressed out. Maybe you're late to this party and that's also causing some anxiety. Maybe you're wearing one of those ugly Christmas sweaters because that's what the party is all about and you're not comfortable in it. Maybe it's an itchy sweater. These are all things that you are wanting to be aware that they are bubbling up for you, that may influence how you respond to something. They're things that are in the back of your mind that really do influence your behavior. So we often call them triggers, but they also can be positive. So I talked about a lot of negative things. Maybe you're super excited about this party. You can't wait to go. You've been looking forward to it. You've got this sweater that you think you're going to win the prize for the ugly sweater contest. So they can be positive things as well. So making sure you're aware of what is going on for you in that moment, what you expect to occur at that event. I'm going to move here so I can get that sunshine off my face. So just being aware of that. And then below that, under the recognition is the management side. is then having some emotional self-control, being able to adapt in the situation, and making sure we can focus our attention. And I have over here on that line in between your self-awareness of being aware and then managing it, is I put stress. Now, this is a meme that we may not all have seen. I've kind of adjusted the language because the language is a little rough originally on this, but that's stress is caused in that when you have that awareness of yourself and you have to kind of rein it in. So that stress is confusion created when one's mind overrides the basic desire to go after some jerk who desperately needs it. So this is what this is talking about, is managing our response to something. So that's the self side of emotional intelligence, being self-aware and then managing our emotional responses. Then when we look at for others, we're looking at social awareness and relational management. So social awareness is having empathy and understanding cues, what's going on for others. So we started out with looking at ourselves, and now we're actually looking at the greater picture of what's going on with other people. This is what we often call group dynamics, and it's a matter of reading situations, understand what's happening, recognizing that maybe there are people here that are not comfortable at this event or party. Maybe this was a super long drive. Maybe this is a family situation where you know that there's some family conflict. So just being aware that how others may be feeling in this situation. And then using our intelligence of that to really manage our interactions with others, to build bonds, to manage conflict, to pay attention really what might be going on for somebody else. So this, I also have something that to kind of give us some guidance on what this means is like the serenity prayer. Give me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change and the courage to change the things I can and the wisdom to distinguish the difference. Basically is in that group, really give me the serenity to understand what's happening and for other people and recognize the things that's going on for them that I can't change, but recognize there are things going on for other people that I don't have any control over and I can't change, but I need to know the difference, and I need to know how to interact with them in a way that's comfortable for them and for me as well. There's a saying out there that I love, which is, you can't change other people, but you can't change the people around you, but you can change the people around you. And that has a lot to do with this, is that we do have some influence with people around us, but we cannot change how people are, but we can change our setting. We can remove ourselves from situations with people that are around us and put different people around us. So at a party, we can excuse ourselves from a certain group and put ourselves in a group that is really aligned with what we're doing, that has a conversation that's healthy for us. And that is part of the emotional intelligence with others, is really being aware socially and picking up on those social cues. So during the holidays, let's use emotional intelligence to thrive during the holidays. So why does this matter? So you are navigating a new lifestyle change. Let me see if I can move this way. Here we go. So we have a new lifestyle change, something that's new for us. We're maybe just starting to this. We might feel a little uncomfortable. This is our first holiday. We're trying to make sure how to navigate that. And so when we look at the sides of the emotional intelligence quotients, that's something that we're recognizing about ourselves. Hey, I'm already a little bit of cockeyed here. I just need to be aware that this is new for me. I need to be patient for myself, breathe, and be a little prepared. It also matters because we probably are really excited. I know that when I went plant-based and I lost 60 pounds, I wanted to scream from the rooftops and tell everybody, this is what you need to do. But also recognize that this might not be the time or place to start to try to convince everybody to eat plant-based. This is a party. They're going for a holiday. It might be a Christmas party. It might be a winter party. It might be a work party. And this part of the group dynamics and the emotional intelligence is that they're going to a party for a party, not really to go and learn about a new way of eating or a new lifestyle change. So keep that in mind. Now, this is not about repression. This doesn't mean that you can't talk about what's gone on for you. And it doesn't mean that you can't talk about being vegan and what it means for you. It's that the goal of this party is probably not that. And so reading the cues of the people around you is an important aspect. So again, I want to make sure that I'm not going to be talking about how to go to a party and not talk about being plant-based. You can certainly do that, but we're going to talk about how to do that with emotional intelligence. The other thing for a lot of us is this might be the first year that we're actually going to parties. With the last 2 years with the pandemic, and there haven't been a lot of holiday events, even with our own families, this might be the first time out, and we are all out of practice. And so it's a good reminder to go through this and go, how do we interact with each other? What is the goal of our party? What are those social graces that we just haven't exercised for the last couple of years? Especially now when everybody is really polarized. The holidays generally come for the winter time. They come after elections, and we just have a lot of right and left and here and there going on in our society. So it can be a little uncomfortable. So spending some time and thinking about that and using emotional intelligence, again, is going to be really important. So the big thing is to prepare. And there's a great saying out there, chance favors the prepared mind. Kind of goes along with a saying that often is told that it's not as positive as chance favors the prepared mind, which is if we fail to prepare, we are preparing to fail. So taking a little bit of time before your party to figure out what it is that's your goal is and where you are in yourself and where others are, can really set you up for success for this party. The first thing is that a lot of times we have a little bit of anxiety on whether we're going to go to the party or not. Maybe you're really nervous that this is a eating Thanksgiving party and you're eating different than everybody else and you just aren't sure how people are going to respond. A lot of times we will say, you know what, I'm just not going to go. I think it's really important to go. We are human social beings. Go to the party. Most often, even if you have that little bit of trepidation inside, going to the party is a better experience than you imagine. Sometimes we consider the worst possible scenario, and just go. Trust yourself. You're going to have a great time. Drop those preconceived notions that everyone's going to be focused on what it is that you're eating. You're focused on what you're eating, and it feels like everyone's going to be focused. But likely that's not going to be the case. Now, there can be some situations that bubble up. Somebody might cue in on what you're doing, and we're going to prepare for that. But the other thing is to drop some of those preconceived notions, just let them go, especially if you may have had some bad interactions with people in the past. Go with an open heart and open mind and expect the best, but be prepared if something bubbles up. And also think about what your boundaries are. What are you willing to let go? What are you willing to stand up for in those situations, and how are you going to respond to that? So when we are looking at, with clients, preparing for a party or an event, we're going to really spend some time talking about some key factors for success. First of all, is communication is really key. So communicate with your host. If it's an eating event, talk to them about the way that you're eating now, offer to bring something along to share with everyone else. And that is like the number one key thing, is if you're going to bring something to eat to the party, bring enough to share. That way you are coming with a sense of abundance, not a sense of a deprecation or a difference that, oh, you know what, I'm going to eat this way. You guys are going to all eat like that, but I'm only going to eat this. Come from this sense of abundance. Hey, I brought all this great food. It's really delicious. Dig in. Spend some time to be centered beforehand so that you are in balance, whether that is taking a little bit of time for some self-care, maybe taking a moment to take a nice bath, a bubble bath, just listen to some music, be grounded so that you're really in a great place. Go with an open heart and mind, expecting to have a great time, but consider the group dynamics as well. Is this a family event and there's some people coming from other parts of the family that maybe they don't interact as well together, so that you are prepared? You know, there might be a little bit of anxiety with Aunt Mabel and Uncle George, you know, so that you can navigate that and be aware. Plan to let conversations fold anew, which is meaning maybe you had a conversation at a party or an event a couple months ago with somebody and you kind of got into an argument about eating styles. Now, that might be that really stuck with you and it really irritated you, and you're not looking forward to being at this party where you had that conversation with that other person. That other person might not even remember that had happened. And so let that go, and go with an open heart and mind that you're just going to have a great time. You'll still have conversations and you're not going to hold that grudge against them and bring that back up that they might not even recall. Now, that's not meaning that if you got in a huge argument and big fight with somebody at a party, and it's happened multiple times, at any time you see that person, that they are in your face about the way that you're eating, you know that's somebody that's not going to be on your side. We're just going to steer clear of that person. But the person that maybe you had a conversation with that didn't really feel like it went the right direction, let that go and give it another opportunity and see how it goes this time. And then we'll spend some time talking about at the event in the situation where maybe that comes up again and you need to excuse yourself from that. Another thing, make sure that you eat or drink beforehand, especially if it's a party with food and there's limited things for you to eat besides what you brought. We want to avoid what we call the hangries, where our emotions are being really driven by our blood sugar. So make sure you have something to eat or drink beforehand. And I would recommend that it's non-alcoholic, because alcohol will lower our inhibitions and can really mess with our emotional intelligence. So go to the party hydrated, with a little bit of food in your stomach, so that you don't have to regulate that as well. All right, so let's talk a little bit about pre-party communications. It's really important to talk to your host about what's going on, especially also if you are the host and you have people coming to your party. Think about what it is that you want to do when you go to that party, or what you want people to do when they come to your event. So here's a couple different communications, and you can tailor this how you want. These are just examples. And throughout this, I just have examples. These are not scripts that you have to use, but think about, what are you going to say? How are you going to communicate this to your host? How are you going to communicate this to the people that are coming to your event? So the first one is, if you're going to a party, hey, I just want to let you know that we eat plant-based now. They'll have, actually, I think the first one is for when people are coming. So in this situation, you want people to bring stuff for a potluck buffet. So letting people know this is how we're eating now, but in this situation, this person says, I'm not going to dictate how everybody else eats. So come on, bring your stuff to the potluck. I'm going to have a lot of really good stuff here too. And then, because I don't want the food to go to the waste, whatever is left over, I'm going to have you take home, because that's for you to enjoy, because I know it's just going to go to waste if you leave it here. The second one is if you've been invited to somebody else's house for a party, just let them know, hey, we're eating plant-based. I don't want you to change what your plans are, but I'm going to bring a couple things to go along. If you would just let me know what's the theme, or is there something that I can provide? I would really love to bring like a salad or a side dish and a little dessert, if that works. And maybe we can communicate on what I can bring that will really complement what you're doing. So those are a couple different ways for the pre-party communications. And again, you'll need to tailor that to the situation and the relationship you have. But what I have found is that these conversations actually go really well. And there's a lot of fear of the unknown, of how I don't want to talk to this person. I don't want to make this a big deal. And you're not making this a big deal. You're just communicating what's going on with you and how to make this work so that the party goes off swimmingly. And I think anymore, there are so many people that are eating different eating patterns, whether it's with allergies or food preferences or lifestyle changes, that this is more of the norm than the unique situation anymore. I think most people recognize that people are eating in a lot of different eating patterns, so it shouldn't be completely unknown. So at the party, some things to be aware of, like we talked about before, about avoiding the hangries, is really limit your alcohol consumption so that you are on your A game. Be a positive example. So really important is that, you're vegan, you are against cruelty, and you are love for all beings. You have this spirit of ahimsa. Really, that rubs off on other people. When you are calm and you are confident and you're having a great time and you're not pointing out the differences in people and you're interacting, you are a positive example, and that really rubs off on other people. So you're not there to change people's minds. You are there for a party. And so we talked about several months ago, Dr. Angela Crawford and I had a really great seminar here on We Did It Health. If you haven't had a chance to see that, I'm sure we'll link that in this presentation, but it was all about behavior change theory and what was called the pre-contemplative stage. Pre-contemplative stage is where people haven't even considered making a change in their diet or lifestyle or any kind of behavior. And so at the party, they're not going there thinking, oh, today I'm going to talk to somebody who's going to help me learn how to change how I eat so that I am healthier. They're going to a party, and it's probably, if it's a holiday party, it has a lot to do with food. So go with the flow. While you may have conversations about what's going on for you, it's not really necessarily the place to be trying to convert people to eat plant-based. There's other situations and other opportunities for that. And as we talked about a moment ago, is being a positive example. When people see how vibrant you are, maybe you've lost weight and they won't recognize you anymore because you look so fantastic, they will ask you, gosh, what is going on? You look fantastic. There's your opportunity to talk about what's going on in your life and what it's done for you, and leave it in that kind of a vein rather than telling them, oh, this is what you should do. I'm going to give you a book and you can start tomorrow. Unless they request that, be a positive example, share what's going on for you, and just go with the flow. So stay in the present, don't bring up old wounds, move on. We talked about letting go. If there's been some bad blood in the past or a bad conversation, let that go and let it be anew. And keep control of your responses. Take a breath. And we're going to take some time in a moment to talk about how to change conversations. And remember that when you're at a party, nobody wins when you get into an argument at a party. You don't win. The person that you're in an argument doesn't win. Your host is uncomfortable. People are around you are uncomfortable. So it's best just not even to get in a heated argument if you can avoid it. Pay attention to what's going on in the room. If you see that there's somebody, a husband and wife, that are having an argument or just kind of out of sorts, maybe that's not the time to have a controversial conversation with one of them. You already recognize, hey, there's a little bit of an issue with those people. And remember, you don't have to have full-blown, huge, existential conversations with people. You're there having conversation appetizers, just little bits of small talk, and that's perfectly fine. So this is really something I thought was helpful. This is from a book by Jean Martinet called Mingling with the Enemy. It's probably available at your library. It's a really helpful book. And Jean really recommends, when you are starting a conversation with somebody, is to determine, are they a friend, a foe, or a fanatic, to help really drive how this conversation is going to go. So first of all, a friend, and I'll say one person could be all of these things based on the topic. It's not that 100% friend, 100% foe, or 100% fanatic. We all have areas in our life, philosophical areas, subject matter, where we can all be a friend, a foe, or fanatic on that subject. And then friend, foe, or fanatic on a different one. So friend feels the same way you do on an issue. And that's based on, what you know about them, how they're presenting themselves. Maybe, it can be their age. It could be their gender. It could be what they're wearing, just those little cues that you can pick on. Or just in the conversation, you're recognizing, oh, this person really is on board with this issue. And we'll get some examples in a moment. Foe, I think this word is really, really strong. But in this situation, foe means they believe the opposite way of you, but they're open-minded. It's not black and white. They're willing to hear you out. They're interested. They just might come at it with a different direction. They are willing to hear what you have to say about it. A fanatic, on the other hand, feels the opposite way and is black and white. They do not want to hear your point of view. They will not agree with you. And worst of all, they want to fight about it. And so that's kind of like the worst case scenario, where we just don't even want to get into controversial conversations with them. They are ready to go and they're just waiting for that invitation. And I think a lot of us have run into that, in whether it's be about veganism or not, that you run into somebody and they're just instant hot and ready to fight. And you know what? That's not the person we're going to have those conversations with. And Elizabeth Kubler-Ross has a really fantastic point that I wanted to bring up, is that all positive emotions come from love. All negative emotions come from fear. And I think that's really, 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 really powerful, especially when we look back to that pre-contemplative state where somebody hasn't even considered making a change. And when you bring that up for them, it's uncomfortable and fearful and causes anxiety for them. It's not that it's right or wrong what you're talking about, but it's that for them, it's fear. And so how that comes across is anger, hate, anxiety, or guilt. Guilt is a huge part of that causes negative reactions in people. So sometimes if you bring a dish to a party and it's plant-based and you're eating that and someone else is talking to you and they mention, oh, well, what is that you're eating? Why aren't you having any turkey? And you say, oh, well, I don't eat turkey because I'm plant-based. I'm vegan. I don't eat meat. And then somebody might look down on their plate, and now whether you even though you didn't say this person looks at their plate and says, they're judging me, and they're angry and they're feeling guilty. And so that's where that emotional intelligence comes in, is recognizing. And sometimes it's just a matter of, and this works for me. And so clearing that off so that you are not accidentally putting this guilt on somebody else. Just clarifying that this is what I do, it works for me. And then changing the subject to something different and much more positive. So when we are encountering these conversations, we want to test the water to find out if this is a friend, foe, or fanatic. And there's just some really simple ways to do this. It's just simply by start the conversation. So when you have somebody who is a friend, they're on your side, they're engaged, they're paying attention, they're relaxed, they're laughing or smiling. It's just a normal conversation. So you know you're on the right track. That body language is really showing that they are engaged and they're interested in what's going on. somebody who's a foe in that subject. Remember, it's not foe 100%. It just might be in that subject area. They are engaged. They're curious. But when you start to push little bits of boundaries with them, all of a sudden it might get kind of silent. You might get crickets in that conversation. They might just stare at you. They might start looking around the room because they're a little uncomfortable. They might fidget. So that's really that emotional intelligence of picking up on those cues on what's going on with that person. And then maybe it's time to back off and go back into that area of the conversation where they were more of a friend, they were more engaged and had more eye contact. So just kind of pay attention to what's going on in that conversation. The fanatic, they may give you a warning sign. Oh, you're one of those people. Well, you know, right then, that's probably not a conversation that's going to go really great. The other thing that might say is, oh my God, I am so tired of hearing about this. They're giving you a gift. They are saying, I don't want to talk about this. Please just, they maybe not even know how to say anything, but they're telling you, I don't want to talk about this. I'm tired of it. I don't want to go there. So another thing they may do is they might interrupt you. They might do a tactic to try to change the subject because they just don't want to talk about it. Or they may not be gracious in any of those, and they just might immediately confront you. So sometimes there's no warning at all. But, you know, when you first start the conversation, pay attention to how that person is responding to you. All right, so let's talk about the art of the small talk. Since we just talked about that's what you're going to do to test if somebody's a friend, foe, or a fanatic. Really listen fully and be curious about what's going on. Now, we have 2 ears and 1 mouth, which means it's really important to listen and less important to talk. And so people love to talk about themselves. So really spend some time to listen to what it is they're talking about. That's really a big art of small talk. And then when they're talking, reflect back what they said. You know, maybe they're telling you all about, hey, what have you been doing the last couple of years? You know, it's been a long time since I've seen you. Oh, well, we've been doing some traveling and, you know, I've been seeing family because it's finally nice to be able to get out. Oh, so you've been doing some traveling. Where's the favorite place you have gone? So I've just reflected back. Oh, you've been doing some traveling. Be empathetic and compassionate. Really show caring about what it is they're talking about and flatter them. Flattery will get you everywhere. People love to feel that they're being appreciated, and they love to talk about themselves and give advice. So that's a really great way in small talk. It's like, oh man, you know, I've been thinking about going to Italy. Where would you recommend I go? So that really helps bring that conversation along. Try not to wear your opinions on your sleeve. You know, be open-minded. Give that presence of open-minded so people feel comfortable in talking. And remember to ask open-ended questions to help really spur the conversation along, rather than saying, so did you like Italy? That's a yes or no, and that's kind of like a block. So instead, change it. What was your favorite thing about Italy? And so now that's kind of roll that conversation along. Okay, here's a chance to do some storytelling. Talk about some experience that you have had that kind of goes along with what they're talking about. Everybody loves stories. Try to find common ground and shared interest. And remember, this is a chess game. Where is this conversation going to go when I ask these questions? Is that a place that I want to take this conversation? If I ask this or say that or respond to this person, where are we going to go? So be really mindful of that. And remember, these are conversation appetizers. This doesn't have to be the whole point of the whole party. It's just, I'm going to have this in-depth conversation. It might be after you get through this small talk. Hey, this is somebody I'm really interested in talking about. But it's okay to have little snippets of conversations and move on to another person. All right, so let's say you are having a conversation and this person's a friend, maybe they're a foe, but it's working really great, and all of a sudden something shifts. Maybe the topic gets on food and they start to get really edgy, and maybe they all of a sudden turn into a fanatic. How do you get yourself out of that subject or out of that situation? All right, so we're going to talk about some creative ways to change the subject. Here's some that we'll talk about. One is called squirrel. We'll use some humor. We'll talk about building bridges, pleading ignorance, toasting, and having a offense game plan as your defense. Not offensive, but an offense. All right, squirrel. So people probably recognize Kevin from the movie Up. This has been around for a long time. The squirrel. Back when I was in high school in the debate club, we had what was called the squirrel tactic, which is to get on a completely different subject. Maybe it's a subject that is not going where you want. It's not serving you. You just completely change the subject. So maybe somebody started like, well, I really don't agree with the veganism, and I just don't think it's a healthy way to eat. You can just act like you didn't even hear what they said and change the subject. Hey, how about the Seahawks game? Wasn't that something else? Just move it on. We're going to change the subject. We're not going to talk about it. I'm going to take charge, and we're going to change the subject. And sometimes, most of the time, they'll just, oh, okay, we're going to talk about something else. It's perfectly fine. You can act like you didn't hear what they said. You can easily just launch into another topic. Again, I'm going to give you some examples. These are not the script that you have to use. Have some things in your pre-plan of what could I change the subject to. Humor. You have to be really, really careful with humor, but oftentimes self-deprecating humor really works. So on the instance where somebody starts commenting on your food and you really just don't want to talk about your food, you want to have a party where you're not focused on what am I eating that's different than you. You can totally acknowledge that you're eating different and say, yep, I eat rabbit food and bird seed. And then you're changing the subject with a little bit of a squirrel, but enough about me. Tell me something interesting about you. How do you know our host? So you've done a couple different things. You've acknowledged that they said something. You used a little bit of humor about yourself rather than somebody else, because that gets into that judgment and anxiousness that people feel if they feel like they're being judged. It's perfectly fine for you to judge yourself. So then you're changing the subject. How do you know our host? And that gives them an opportunity to start talking. Not only is that giving them an opportunity to talk, but they get to control the conversation, which is what they were trying to do to begin with. All right, bridge building. Yes, you can acknowledge exactly what it was they said. Maybe it's a topic that you're kind of okay when talking about, your food, but you really want to control where that conversation goes. So yeah, I did bring a dish. I do have some dietary restrictions. I really don't want to get into that, but doesn't everything here look beautiful? It's just a beautiful spread. So then you start talking about how gorgeous the food is. It's away from what you were eating or the dish that you brought, but you still wanted to have a conversation about food. It's a safe area for you in that situation. So you're just using what they asked to bridge it to something else that you want to talk about. Finally, there's another one. It's called pleading ignorance. Maybe it's something that's kind of controversial. Maybe you know a lot more than this person in this subject area. So maybe when you start talking about, oh yeah, I'm eating whole food plant-based, they want to launch into statistics about paleo or other dietary modalities you don't want to talk about. And they want to have a debate with you about statistics or numbers. You can always say, you know what, that's really interesting. I'm not sure about that, so I'll have to look it up. But I do know, and then you bring it into something else that you want to talk about. I do know that there's a game of Pictionary over there that I want to play, and I'm ready to go. So it could be anything that you want to change the subject to. The important part is, hey, that's really interesting. You're acknowledging them and say, you know, I'm really not so sure about that. I'd have to look that up, and then change the subject. You're telling them, you know what, I'm pleading a little bit of ignorance. You're not saying that they're wrong or you're right or you're wrong and they're right. It's just saying, you know what, we just don't have enough information right here to talk about that. You can always do a toast and acknowledge. This is another situation where you're acknowledging a difference. Well, Let's drink to a difference of opinion, to good company, and most of all, our host. Everybody will stop and do a cheers at any time. And that's a really great break from one conversation subject to another. You can even actually excuse yourself in that moment, do a cheers. And while they're doing the cheers, just kind of wander on to the next person to have another conversation appetizer. And there is nothing wrong with saying, you know what? I don't want to talk about that. I think sometimes we get into the mindset that they brought up the conversation. I guess I'm going to have to talk about it. You have every right to set some boundaries and say, you know what? I really don't want to talk about that. Let's talk about something else. Let's just be perfectly honest and put it out there. You don't have to engage in any argument you're invited to. You have that choice just to say, no, I'm not going to have this argument today. We're not going to talk about that, but we'll talk about something else. And if they're not comfortable with ending that conversation and talking about something else, you can remove yourself from that situation. Just set your boundaries. So in that case, let's say they have those fighting words. Okay, a little sip of water. You can simply walk away. You don't have to be engaged. You don't have to get involved in the fight you're invited to. You have every right to say, you know what, I don't agree with that. And you can share why. Whatever your reasons are, you don't have to insult them, exaggerate, or be judgy. Don't raise your voice. In my experience in emergency services, the more people raise their voices, the more heated it becomes, the conversation. And so something I learned from my mom, who was a bank teller, she always said, if somebody starts raising their voice, you lower theirs. You lower yours. First of all, it doesn't accelerate the shouting match because you're not getting involved in it. Number one. Number two, they have to lower their voice to hear you. The louder they get, the quieter you get, the more they have to kind of lower their voice so they can hear what you say. You can share new information in that situation and then move on. There's lots of situations this may come up with where somebody says something that's really, really offensive. And maybe it's about gender or about sexuality or about veganism or whatnot. You can say, I'm sorry, I really don't agree with that. And here's my reason why. And I'm going to move on. You do have the ability to stand up for yourself and your beliefs, but we're not going to get in an argument about it. And sometimes you just have to remove yourself from the situations to say, see ya. And there's some really great ways to do that. One, you know what? Hey, that's really interesting. I really need to go to the bathroom. So just remove yourself that way. If you need to find an excuse, if you're not comfortable just saying, I'm not going to have this conversation, you can find a reason that you need to leave that conversation. Another thing you can do is you could actually direct their attention to somebody else. Make sure that this is somebody that's not going to later go, hey, thanks a lot for sicking so-and-so on me. But that's always an opportunity to say, oh, hey, have you met so-and-so? And then share something that was in common with both of them. And then you can just excuse yourself from that situation. Now, sometimes we are the fanatic. And it's really important to say, you know what? I think I got on my soapbox there. I'm really sorry. Let's talk about something different. I'm really passionate about that. I'm very sorry. That's really helpful for repairing conversations. Just to admit that you took it a little too far. If somebody's going on and on and on, and you just really want to leave, but you don't want to walk away from them in the middle of a sentence, a really great thing to do is to put out your hand, like a handshake, or do this namaste. And it's a great visual cue for someone they're like, what's this person doing? Because you put your hand out, they're going to shake it. And as soon as they put their hand out to shake, they're going to take a pause or a breath, or same with the namaste. And you go, thank you so much. I'm really great conversation. It was wonderful to meet you. I need to, do whatever to remove yourself from the conversation. So that's a really great way to get yourself out of a conversation. Do the hand or the namaste. Sometimes we just need a break from people. I know I am an introvert. I get my power from being with my own thoughts and taking a breath. Take a break. Go get a beverage and maybe go outside on the patio and take a moment and look at the stars, or go in an area of the house where it's a little quieter and take a break and get your power back. And then you're restored, get yourself recentered and get back into the conversation, especially if you have been in a conversation that was not a place you wanted to go. Take a break. There's nothing wrong with that. Find some space. Go into the bathroom and just sit there for a moment and get yourself back into center. And sometimes this is not the situation you want to be in. We all talk about this to our kids and in going to parties as teenagers, that sometimes that's just not the party you want to be at. And we forget that great advice that we give to our teenagers, that, hey, you know what? I've tried really hard. I've made my showing. I've had a couple appetizers. I've mingled. I've said hello to the guests. They're the host. And I'm just thinking I'm done with this event. It's time for me to go. There is no shame in that. To really have that emotional intelligence of, okay, I've made my presence and now it's time for me to go. Always, though, if you are going to take that, make sure that you go and find the host and thank them so very much for this wonderful event and party, and that you really do just need to go. But the important things, don't leave without saying goodbye. All right. So in summary, we talked about using emotional intelligence, paying attention to what's going on in you, what's going on in others, so that you can craft your environment the best to serve everybody. Before you go, take some time to think about the different scenarios and brainstorm. Come up with some scenarios, come up with responses that you kind of are comfortable with, that are going to work for you. Remember, these are conversation appetizers. You can small talk, watch for those cues in others, and then move on. Or you can stay. This person's a friend. We're having a really great time. Be yourself. Keep it positive. Continue to stay in your ethics. Share when things are appropriate. Change the subject when you need to get yourself out of a situation. But most importantly is have a really great time. So here's my contact information. If you have further questions or you're interested in working with me on coaching for going to parties and events or other social situations, how do you put your new lifestyle in practice in your life? These are all of my contact information. So I really appreciate the time. And Peter, did we have any questions that came in?
Sure. Well, we have questions. We're also running out of time, but let's do a question here. Kathy Koch asked, let me show it and maybe change this. She was asking, for those who do not want people to bring non-vegan food into their homes, how do you handle that?
Yeah, simply communicate that. There's nothing wrong. This is your home and your domain, and you have the ability to set the boundaries there and to say, hey, we're eating plant-based. We're vegan, and we're not eating animal foods at all. We just ask that you bring a vegan offering or you can just say, I'm providing all the food. Just come and enjoy yourself. Everything's going to be provided. You don't have to worry about a thing. If you wanted to bring, you could find something for them to bring. Bring a loaf of bread, or bring, I need some cranberry juice for a cocktail. Would you bring that? That gives them the ability to bring something in. Or you can say, bring a salad of some kind. Here are a couple websites that have really great recipes. Pick something from that. So there's a couple different ways to handle that.
Beautiful. Let me see, what am I doing here? We have a question. I'd like to share one more question. Marquita was asking about your ability to influence people at the fire, your fire teammates at the firehouse, and I'm trying to find her question to highlight it. But yeah, she was wondering about how you did with with the other firefighters that you worked with now that you've changed your lifestyle?
Sure. The biggest thing is I focused on me and was what it was for me. So I shared my why. That is always the biggest thing. This is why I did this. Doesn't mean that you have to do that, but this is why I made that change. And this is what it did for me. And so that way it's not coming up as a judgment at all. Hey, you should do this because blah, 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 blah. Now, this is what I experienced when I did that. And it completely changed my life. Just like what I talked about at the very beginning when I did my introduction. This is what I learned. This was my family history. This was a law that changed. And I thought, oh my gosh, I need to do something. And so I did the research. This is what I learned. And it made my life, it changed me for the better. So that's really how to present that to other people. And then in my fire station, they became interested. Oh my gosh, I have that same issue. Hey, I'm a firefighter too, and I'm under that same presumptive cancer law. I'd like to learn more about that. So then that gives them the ability to say, tell me more about that, rather than me putting it on them. Because people like to kind of meter stuff as they're feeling comfortable. So that gives them the ability to say, tell me more.
Beautiful. Well, thank you so much for that, and thank you for your time. Thank you, everybody, for joining us. Everybody, please post your comments and questions, and Cindy and we will monitor them and reply to them. And if we have people who'd like to get together and maybe have a more informal conversation, or perhaps practice some of the exercises that you've gone through, this was a brilliant presentation. You had so many wonderful tips and suggestions. I love the fact that everything's coming from love or fear, and a reminder on that. There's so many other things that you've said here about picking up cues. I love the concept of being sensitive to whether somebody's a friend or a foe or a fanatic. Just so much rich information. So thank you so very much for all that. And everybody, we look forward to seeing you again next week with all the talks we have coming up. Of course, next week being Thanksgiving, we're going to take Saturday off, and we'll be back the Saturday after that. So with that, thank you everybody for joining us, and have a wonderful weekend. Thank you, Cindy.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.